The Buckskin Joe County Courthouse was moved to Fairplay, Colorado, the new seat to Park County.
50 things considered normal in the Wild West. Can you imagine when carrying a gun was as common as wearing a hat and settling dispute with duels was considered perfectly normal? The Wild West was a place where lawlessness reigned and life was tough and unpredictable. Number 1. Strict gun control. The Wild West was a place where everyone walked around with guns strapped to their hips, ready to draw at any moment. But in reality, many towns had pretty strict gun control laws. Places like Dodge City and Tombstone, Arizona, required visitors to check their guns with the local marshal when they arrived.
And some gunfighters did wear belts like this, but it was rare.
These regulations were put in place to prevent violence and ensure the safety of residents and visitors. Imagine stepping off the stagecoach and being met by the marshal who tells you to hand over your revolver. Number 2. Frequent duels. Despite these gun control measures, duels were still a common occurrence in the Wild West. These face-offs were often over matters of honor, love, or business disputes. Duels were somewhat ritualistic and followed a specific code of conduct, often taking place at dawn and with agreed-upon rules. They weren't always fatal, but the threat of a gunfight kept the stakes high. Society, oddly enough, seemed to accept these duels as a necessary part of life. It was a way for men to settle their differences and defend their reputations. Number 3. Saloons as community centers. Saloons were much more than just places to grab a drink. They were the social hubs of the Wild West.
Rather, saloons were a socializing focal point at the center of a boomtown.
These establishments served as community centers where people gathered to exchange news, conduct business, and relax. A typical saloon offered more than just liquor. It provided food, lodging, and sometimes even entertainment like gambling, dancing, and live music. The atmosphere was lively, and patrons could range from cowboys and miners to businessmen and lawmen. Number 4. Mail-order brides. The gender imbalance in the Wild West was a significant issue, with men often outnumbering women by a large margin. This led to the common practice of mail-order brides, where men would place advertisements in newspapers seeking wives. Women from the East or even other countries would respond, often motivated by the promise of a new life and adventure. These marriages were sometimes arranged without the couple ever meeting in person until their wedding day. Number 5. Spiritualism and Seances.
Yep, I'm very happy for you now to do this yourself. Look at my hand.
Spiritualism was surprisingly popular among settlers in the Wild West. The belief that the spirits of the dead could communicate with the living through mediums and seances was a source of comfort for many. It provided hope and a sense of connection to those they had lost. Seances became social events where people would gather to try to contact spirits. Practitioners like Kate Bender gained reputations as psychics and spiritual healers. This fascination with the supernatural was a way for people to cope with the harsh realities of frontier life. Number 6. Traveling medicine shows. Traveling medicine shows were like the original road shows, bringing entertainment and dubious medical cures to small towns across the Wild West. These shows featured a mix of performances, including music.
When I tell you to, and only when I tell you to, I want you to look away from the center of the disc and look directly at my head.
Magic tricks and comedic acts, all designed to draw in a crowd. The main event, however, was always the charismatic doctor who would take the stage to peddle his miraculous cures. These medicines, often referred to as snake oil, were touted as remedies for everything from headaches to heart disease. Number 7. Snake Oil Salesman. Snake oil salesmen became synonymous with deception in the Wild West. These cunning entrepreneurs sold potions and elixirs, that they claimed could cure a wide range of ailments. The term snake oil actually comes from one of the popular products they sold, which was said to be made from Chinese water snakes and was promoted as a powerful remedy. In reality, these concoctions were just a mix of alcohol, opium, and other ingredients with no real medicinal value.
He tended to lose parts of himself. When I joined him, his left hand and his left ear.
Despite their dubious nature, snake oil salesmen were incredibly successful at convincing people to part with their hard-earned money. Number 8. Photographing the dead. One of the more macabre practices of the Wild West was post-mortem photography. In an era when having your photograph taken was a rare and expensive event, many families chose to commemorate their deceased loved ones with a final portrait. These photographs were often staged to make the deceased appear as though they were still alive, sometimes even posing them with family members or in lifelike positions. It might seem eerie to us now, but back then it was a way to create a lasting memory of their loved one who departed. Number 9. Barbers as surgeons. In the Wild West, barbershops were more than just places to get a haircut
or find companionship. In bustling shops, barbers might hire porters to assist with towels.
Barbers often doubled as surgeons and dentists, providing medical services to the community. This practice dates back to medieval times when barbers were known for their skills with blades and were often called upon to perform surgeries, bloodletting, and tooth extractions. In the frontier towns where trained medical professionals were scarce, barbers filled a crucial gap. If you had a toothache or needed a bullet removed, the local barber was likely your go-to person. Number 10. Public hangings. Public hangings were one of the grim spectacles of the Wild West, serving as both a form of entertainment and a method of enforcing justice. These executions were often carried out in the town square and drew large crowds, including families with children. People would gather to watch the condemned meet their fate, treating it almost like a community event. The authorities used these public executions as a deterrent. Hoping the sight of a hanging would discourage others from committing crimes. It was a harsh and brutal form of justice, but it was accepted as necessary for maintaining order in the lawless frontier. Number 11. Bounty hunters. Bounty hunters were a unique and crucial part of law enforcement in the Wild West. These men were essentially private contractors, hired to capture criminals who had fled justice. When a wanted outlaw was on the loose, local authorities would put up a bounty, offering a cash reward for the fugitive's capture. Bounty hunters would then take up the challenge, motivated by the potential payday. They had to be tough, resourceful, and often ruthless, tracking their targets across vast and dangerous territories. Methods varied widely, from clever detective work to brute force. Sometimes they worked alone, other times they teamed up with other hunters. Number 12. Vigilante Justice. In the Wild West, where formal law enforcement was often thin on the ground, vigilante justice was surprisingly common.
There were times in the West when it was kill or be killed.
Communities would sometimes take the law into their own hands, forming vigilante groups to deal with criminals and enforce order. This was especially true in remote areas where sheriffs or marshals were few and far between. Vigilantes acted out of a sense of necessity and urgency, often conducting swift and brutal justice. They would capture, try, and punish criminals without the formalities of a legal system. Number 13. Traveling judges. With the vast territories to cover and a shortage of legal professionals, the Wild West relied on circuit judges who traveled from town to town to dispense justice. These judges, often referred to as circuit riders, would make their rounds to hold court in various locations, ensuring that even the most remote areas received some form of legal oversight. The arrival of a circuit judge was a significant event in any town, bringing a sense of authority and the promise of justice. These judges faced enormous challenges, including long, arduous journeys.
That this number is very different from what most people think, was not in the tens of thousands.
And the task of dealing with a wide range of cases from petty disputes to serious crimes. Number 14. Wanted posters. Wanted posters were a ubiquitous feature of the Wild West, serving as a key tool in the hunt for criminals. These posters would display the name, likeness, and crimes of the wanted individual, along with the reward offered for their capture. Found in saloons, post offices, and other public places, they inform the community about dangerous outlaws and incentivize their capture. Number 15. Outlaw gangs. Outlaw gangs were the stuff of legend in the Wild West, with groups like the James Younger Gang and the Dalton Gang becoming notorious for their daring crimes. These gangs often consisted of a mix of family members and close associates.
The ones that had the most success were led by cunning folks like Jesse James or Butch Cassidy.
Bound together by loyalty and the shared goal of easy money. They specialized in robberies, banks, trains, and stagecoaches. They were all prime targets. Number 16. The Bloody Benders. The Bloody Benders were a family that turned a Kansas homestead into a house of horrors in the 1870s. The Bender family, consisting of Ma, Pa, their son, John, and a woman believed to be either their daughter or John's wife, Kate, were seemingly respectable innkeepers. Kate, in particular, gained notoriety as a psychic and healer. But guess who checked into the Benders' Inn often didn't check out? Suspicion arose when a series of travelers disappeared, leading to the discovery of a grisly scene in the Benders' home. A trap door in the floor revealed a cellar filled with bodies, all brutally murdered. Number 17. Elmer McCurdy's corpse.
I think the most remarkable feature is his face.
He's recognizable almost if we had a picture.
It's recognizable.
Elmer McCurdy's story is one of the strangest tales from the Wild West. After a short and unimpressive criminal career, McCurdy was killed in a shootout with lawmen in 1911. His body was embalmed and put on display at a funeral home when no one claimed it. And this is where things took a bizarre turn. His embalmed body was sold to a carnival and began a posthumous career as a sideshow attraction. For decades, McCurdy's corpse was passed from one carnival to another, mistaken for a mannequin rather than the real body it was. Number 18. Annie Oakley. Annie Oakley, born Phoebe Ann Mosey, was one of the Wild West's most celebrated sharpshooters.
To buy certain supplies he needed for the farm. However, during the journey,
From a young age, Oakley demonstrated an uncanny talent for marksmanship. She gained fame after defeating marksman Frank Butler in a shootout contest, and later marrying him and joining Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. Oakley's incredible shooting skills wowed audiences for decades. She could split playing cards, snuff out candles, and shoot corks off bottles from a distance. She was a pioneer for women in a male-dominated field, showing that women could be just as skilled, if not more so, than men in shooting. Number 19. Poker Alice. Alice Ivers, known as Poker Alice, was a formidable poker player in the Wild West. Born in England, she moved to America where she eventually found herself in the boom towns of Colorado. Widowed at a young age, Alice turned to poker to support herself. Her sharp mind and excellent card skills quickly earned her a reputation as one of the best players in the West.
Alice threatened him with her .38 caliber pistol. After that incident, Tubbs and Ivers...
She dressed in elaborate, fashionable dresses and smoked cigars while playing, adding to her distinctive image. Number 20. Pearl Hart. Pearl Hart's tale is one of the most famous stories of female outlaws in the Wild West. Born in Canada, she ventured to Arizona, where she turned to crime after a series of personal hardships in 1899. She and her partner, Joel Boot, robbed a stagecoach, making her one of the few women to do so. They were captured soon after due to their inexperience and Hart's distinctive appearance. Her trial garnered widespread media attention, partly because of her gender. Despite being sentenced to prison, she was released early, likely due to the public fascination with her case. 21. Saloon Girls. Saloon girls were a staple of the Wild West.
Of girls sold drinks and nothing else. Another common misconception.
But their lives were often misunderstood. Far from being mere entertainers or barmaids, these women played vital roles in their communities. They were hired for their charm and social skills, tasked with making patrons feel welcome and encouraging them to spend more money. Saloon girls were often well educated and cultured, providing conversation and companionship in a rugged male-dominated world. They performed songs, danced, and sometimes even played cards with their customers. Number 22. Businesswoman. Women in the Wild West often found themselves in positions of power and influence as business owners. With opportunities wide open due to the rapid growth and demand for services, women ran hotels, boarding houses, and general stores. They were entrepreneurs who provided essential services to the booming populations of mining and cattle towns.
Historical accounts tell us that many women took the reins, sometimes out of necessity, sometimes by choice.
These businesswomen were resilient and resourceful, often balancing their professional responsibilities with family life. Their contributions were critical to the development of frontier communities, proving that women could thrive and lead in the challenging conditions of the Wild West. Number 23. Female doctors. Female doctors were rare but highly respected figures in the Wild West. In a time when medical professionals were in short supply, these women provided essential healthcare services. They practiced medicine in remote areas, often traveling long distances to reach their patients. Women like Dr. Mary Edwards Walker, who served as a surgeon during the Civil War, brought their expertise to the frontier, where they treated everything from gunshot wounds to childbirth complications. Their presence challenged traditional gender roles and paved the way for future generations of women in medicine. Number 24. Outlaw Women. The Wild West wasn't just home to male outlaws, women also took up the mantle of lawlessness.
A set of extraordinary women emerged. They were the homesteaders and entrepreneurs building homes and businesses in the sprawling openness of the frontier.
Figures like Belle Starr, known as the Bandit Queen, and Pearl Hart, the stagecoach robber, carved out their notorious reputations. These women often turned to crime due to personal hardships or the desire for adventure and independence. They led gangs, orchestrated robberies, and lived lives on the run, just like their male counterparts. Number 25. Gold Rush Widows. The Gold Rush era brought not just fortune seekers, but also heartache, particularly for the many women who became widows. As men flocked to mining camps,
think positive, right?
The dangerous conditions and frequent accidents left many women alone and destitute. These Gold Rush widows had to fend for themselves, often taking on multiple roles to survive. They ran boarding houses, took in laundry, or found other means to make ends meet. Number 26. Blue Laws. In the Wild West, blue laws were strict moral regulations that dictated acceptable behavior, often based on religious principles. These laws could be quite specific and sometimes bizarre. For instance, some towns prohibited activities such as dancing, playing cards, or even whistling on Sundays. The goal was to maintain a sense of moral order and ensure that Sundays were reserved for rest and worship.
In other words, a vigilance committee for the vigilance committee. Ah, the seeds of bureaucracy.
Violating these laws could result in hefty fines or even public shaming. Number 27. Town curfews. Curfews were another method used to maintain order in the Wild West. Towns often implemented curfews to curb nighttime mischief and keep the peace. These curfews typically required residents to be off the streets by a certain hour, usually enforced by local lawmen or town marshals. The sound of a bell or horn would signal the beginning of curfew, and anyone found wandering after that time could be arrested or fined. This practice was especially common in mining towns, where the influx of transient workers could lead to disorder. Number 28, Mustache Tax. One of the more bizarre taxes in the Wild West was the Mustache Tax.
Your average cowboy was likely to treat themselves to a haircut, shave, and maybe, if they were feeling extravagant.
In certain areas, men were required to pay a fee for the privilege of sporting facial hair. The rationale behind this particular tax is somewhat murky, but it was likely a revenue-generating measure that capitalized on the popularity of mustaches among men. This tax varied from place to place, and failure to pay it could result in fines. Picture having to shell out money just to keep your mustache. A strange concept by today's standards for sure, but back then it was quite a quirky part of life in some frontier towns. Number 29, public bathhouses. Public bathhouses were essential in the Wild West, providing a place for people to clean up in an era when private bathrooms were a luxury. These bathhouses offered hot water and a variety of amenities, making them a popular spot for men and women alike. In towns where miners and cowboys spent long days covered in dirt and sweat, a trip to the bathhouse was not just about hygiene, but also about relaxation and socializing. Number 30, temperance movements.
The entire nation's attention was focused on the war effort, and causes such as the temperance movement and the women's suffrage movement were temporarily placed on hold.
Temperance movements gained momentum in the Wild West as part of broader efforts to curb alcohol consumption. These movements were often led by religious groups and women's organizations who viewed alcohol as a root cause of social problems like crime and domestic violence. Temperance advocates campaigned for the prohibition of alcohol, organizing rallies and pushing for local laws to ban or restrict its sale. Saloons, which were central to social life in many towns, became the primary targets of these movements. Number 31, herbal remedies. In the Wild West, herbal remedies were a cornerstone of medical treatment. With professional medical care often scarce, settlers relied on the knowledge of local plants and herbs to treat illnesses and injuries. Remedies from ingredients like willow bark for pain relief or echinacea for infections were common. These treatments were passed down through generations and were sometimes the only option available. The use of herbal medicine was practical and necessary.
During the Civil War, many doctors became quick care professionals. Due to the high level of amputations to ward off infection,
reflecting the settlers' resourcefulness in a harsh and often unforgiving environment. Number 32, bloodletting. Bloodletting was a widely accepted medical practice in the Wild West, believed to cure a variety of ailments by balancing the body's humors. Doctors and barbers would use leeches or sharp instruments to draw blood from patients, thinking it would help with everything from fevers to infections. While the practice now seems archaic and even harmful, it was a common treatment method at the time. Bloodletting was based on ancient medical theories and persisted well into the 19th century, despite the risks and questionable effectiveness. Number 33, patent medicines. Patent medicines were hugely popular in the Wild West, often touted as miracle cures for a wide range of ailments. These over-the-counter remedies were typical concoctions of alcohol, opium, and various herbs sold under impressive-sounding names. Advertising for patent medicines were ubiquitous, with colorful posters and catchy slogans promising instant relief.
The pharma industry has gone out into the natural world to look for unique compounds that have some health benefit.
While some patent medicines provided temporary relief due to their high alcohol content, many were ineffective and potentially dangerous. Number 34, home remedies. Home remedies were another vital aspect of healthcare in the Wild West. With doctors few and far between, families often relied on traditional knowledge and household items to treat common illnesses. Remedies included everything from honey and lemon for sore throats to baking soda for indigestion. These treatments were practical and based on whatever resources were at hand. While some home remedies were quite effective, others were based on superstition or incomplete medical knowledge, making frontier medicine a blend of practical and folk practices. Number 35. Mental health treatments. Mental health treatment in the Wild West was rudimentary at best, often steeped in misunderstanding and stigma. People with mental health issues were frequently treated inhumanely or isolated from society. Common treatments included confinement, physical restraint, and even exorcisms for those believed to be possessed. There was little understanding of mental illness as we know it today, and effective treatments were
The wet pack consisted of packing, that is wrapping, patients in wet sheets.
Virtually non-existent. Those suffering from mental health conditions faced significant challenges as the frontier environment offered few resources or compassion for their struggles. Number 36. Stagecoaches. Stagecoaches were the lifeline of transportation in the Wild West, connecting distant towns and settlements. These horse-drawn vehicles carried passengers, mail, and goods across rugged terrain, playing a crucial role in the expansion of the frontier. The journey by stagecoach was often long and uncomfortable, with travelers enduring rough roads and harsh weather conditions. Despite the discomfort, stagecoaches were a vital link between isolated communities, helping to integrate the vast and sprawling territories of the West. Number 37. Pony Express. The Pony Express was a legendary mail service that operated for a brief but impactful 18 months from 1860 to 1861. Riders on horseback would relay mail across nearly 2,000 miles from Missouri to California, covering vast distances at incredible speeds. The service was renowned for its efficiency and the bravery of its riders, who faced threats from harsh weather, treacherous terrain, and potential attacks. Although it was eventually rendered obsolete by the Telegraph,
oxen are cheaper and more substantial over the long haul. Yeah, but mules are faster and stand the heat better.
the Pony Express remains an iconic symbol of the rugged determination and pioneering spirit of the Wild West. Number 38. Telegraph. The telegraph revolutionized communication in the Wild West, providing an instant means of sending messages over long distances. Completed in 1861, the first transcontinental telegraph line connected the east and west coasts, drastically reducing the time it took to communicate. This innovation had a profound impact on business, government, and personal communication, fostering greater connectivity and coordination across the expanding United States. The telegraph's introduction marked the beginning of a new era in communication, linking the Wild West more closely with the rest of the country. Number 39. Railroads. The development of railroads was a game-changer for the Wild West, facilitating the movement of people, goods, and resources across the continent. The completion of the Transcontinental Railroad in 1869 connected the east and west coasts, making travel and trade more efficient and less perilous. Railroads spurred economic growth too, encouraging settlement and transformed the landscape of the West. Towns sprang up along the tracks, and the easy access to distant markets helped to integrate the frontier with the broader national economy. Number 40. Wagon trains. Wagon trains were a common sight during the westward expansion, as groups of settlers traveled together for safety and companionship. These caravans of covered wagons carried pioneers and their possessions across the plains and mountains, following routes like the Oregon Trail and the California Trail. The journey was arduous and fraught with challenges, including disease, weather, and potential conflicts with Native American tribes. Number 41. Minstrel shows. Minstrel shows were a popular form of entertainment in the Wild West, featuring musical and comedic performances that often included racially insensitive caricatures. These shows, performed by white actors in blackface, were widespread and reflected the prejudices of the time. Despite their problematic nature, minstrel shows drew large audiences and played a significant role in the cultural landscape of the era. They provided a glimpse into the entertainment preferences of frontier society, highlighting both the diversity and the racial issues present in the Wild West. Number 42, Buffalo Bill's Wild West Show. Buffalo Bill's Wild West Show was a spectacular traveling performance that brought the drama and excitement of the frontier to audiences around the world. Founded by William Buffalo Bill Cody in 1883, the show featured reenactments of famous battles,
racing horses, roping, riding, shooting,
displays of horsemanship, and performances by notable figures like Annie Oakley. It played a crucial role in shaping the romanticized image of the Wild West, blending historical events with myth and entertainment. Number 43, Gambling. Gambling was a ubiquitous pastime in the Wild West, with card games, dice, and betting on various events providing excitement and diversion. Saloons often hosted poker games, where fortunes could be won or lost in a single hand. Gambling was a way for people to pass the time, socialize, and sometimes make a quick buck. The allure of risk and reward captured the spirit of the frontier, where life itself was often a gamble. Famous gamblers like Doc Holliday and Poker Alice became legends, adding to the mystique of the Wild West. Number 44, Circuses. Traveling circuses brought a touch of wonder and excitement to the Wild West, offering a break from the harsh realities of frontier life. These circuses featured a variety of acts, including acrobats, clowns, animal trainers, and sideshow attractions. They provided entertainment for all ages and drew large crowds wherever they set up their tents. For many frontier towns, the arrival of a circus was a major event, bringing joy and spectacle to the community. Circuses played an important role in the cultural life of the Wild West, adding a bit of magic to the rugged landscape. Number 45, Rodeos. Rodeos originated in the Wild West as competitions, where cowboys could showcase their skills in activities like bronco riding, roping, and bull riding. These events celebrated the practical skills needed for cattle ranching and became popular entertainment. Rodeos were not only a way to prove one's abilities,
And then a big look to the right, back around to the left, and that's the thing with this bull. They can't really...
but also a social event that brought communities together. They have since evolved into a professional sport with a global following, but their roots remain deeply embedded in the traditions of the Wild West. Number 46, Boomtowns. Boomtowns were a hallmark of the Wild West, springing up almost overnight in response to discoveries of gold, silver, or other valuable resources. These towns experienced rapid growth, attracting miners, merchants, and prospectors hoping to strike it rich. The influx of people brought both prosperity and chaos, with businesses and saloons flourishing alongside crime and disorder. However, boomtowns often faced a bust when their resources ran out, leading to sudden decline and abandonment. Number 47, Ghost Towns. Ghost towns are the eerie remnants of once thriving communities that were abandoned when their resources were depleted or economic conditions changed. Walking through a ghost town feels like stepping back in time, with buildings and streets left to decay.
If one thing is for certain, it's that with every ghost town comes an incredibly rich story full of both optimistic beginnings and haunted endings.
These towns offer a poignant reminder of the transient nature of frontier life and the boom and bust cycles that shape the Wild West. 48. Mining camps. Mining camps were the rough and ready settlements that sprang up around gold and silver strikes. These camps were often little more than clusters of tents and makeshift shacks, housing miners who worked long hours in harsh conditions. Life in a mining camp was tough, with rudimentary amenities and a transient population. They were the birthplace of many frontier towns and played a crucial role in the westward expansion of the United States. Number 49, fort towns. Fort towns were established around military forts, which served as outposts of civilization and defense in the frontier territories. These towns provided essential services to the soldiers stationed at the forts and often grew into significant communities. Forts offered protection against Native American raids and served as bases for military operations.
These rickety outposts and inspired towns stretched from the mountains of Golden City in modern-day Breckenridge, Colorado.
The towns that developed around them were often centers of trade and communication, helping to anchor the spread of settlement into the West. Number 50, Reservation Life. Life on Native American reservations in the Wild West was a stark contrast to the freedom and mobility that characterized the rest of the frontier. As settlers pushed westward, Native American tribes were forcibly relocated to reservations, often on marginal lands that made traditional ways of life difficult. Life on the reservation was challenging, with inadequate resources, harsh living conditions, and the loss of cultural practices. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.